Almost 2,000 years ago, a very poignant question was asked. What is truth? Let's explore it. You're on the road. Welcome to the road. For reviews,
opinions,
and discussions. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Rasan. And as always, we want to thank you for joining us. And remember, we want to hear from you. So hit us up on joinusontheroad.com, or you can catch us on social media at The Road Podcast. And you can listen to us, our audio streams live on your local podcast app. And you can also check us out on video on YouTube.
So we want you to hit us up.
Yeah.
But also, I just want to throw one more thing out there. Look out for our Real on the Road Black Wall Street segment coming to you sometime in November. We'll give you more information as far as the date of that first show airing, and we want you to join us. I think you're going to enjoy the show. It's going to be a very interesting show.
Definitely.
Black Wall Street.
Yeah, and so those of you who are watching us on video, you guys already noticed something different. But for those of you who are listening to us via audio, via podcast app, you may or may not be able to tell, but we actually are in our new studio space.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a upgraded space with a lot more room to kind of spread our wings.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to make sure that we had a great space to provide the best content possible for everybody, because we got a lot to talk about, and we want to make sure that for our new segments and all the new things that we have going on, we wanted to have the space to kind of do that and spread our wings a little bit. So
definitely,
this is the first show recorded in the new studio, so we're super excited about that.
Without a doubt.
So
we got a lot of good things coming up.
Yeah.
So
man.
Hey, hang with us, y'all.
Yeah.
Subscribe. Yeah.
That's it.
You know, there's some good stuff coming up too.
Yeah, you don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it. So, in the preview today, you posed a very, I think that word that you used was good, so I'm gonna use it again. Poignant question.
Yeah.
There was a poignant question that was asked.
Yeah,
what is truth? And,
you know, this question was actually posed almost 2,000 years ago, and this question was posed or asked by Pilate when he was speaking to Jesus. Now, I just want to give you an idea of the context here so you can understand where we're coming from in the show today. Is that if you remember from the biblical reference, that at this point in time that Jesus was taken before Pilate so he could be actually tried and executed on the grounds of basically a lot of accusations that were made about him at the time. And so at this particular time, when Jesus was standing before Pilate after he had been taken in to custody from the garden and taken before Pilate, because back then you have to understand that the Jews weren't allowed, according to Roman law, to actually execute anyone. So they had to take anyone for execution to the Roman authorities. So at this time, a lot of accusations were being said, and then Pilate was there interrogating Jesus at the time. And at this time, after interrogating him for a while, and hearing what the people were saying he was accused of, Pilate finally asked this question. The question was, what is truth? The people had said a lot of things that Jesus had done. A lot of accusations were flying around. And Pilate just came to the point where he asked the question, what is truth? He went back out to the people to talk to them, said, I find no guilt in this man. I can find him guilty of nothing. So we asked this question today on our show, because it's a question I think that is relevant to today.
Absolutely.
And so we asked this question, what is truth?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, and it could be it can be a bit touchy sometimes for people when you start talking about truth. What is truth? Trying to define truth. But I think that the fact that it is such a touchy subject is why it should be explored.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah, because there's a need, and I think that we're seeing a lot of symptoms of people kind of avoiding, truth, and actually defining it, and holding themselves accountable to being,
I mean, but what's it all based on? Just to give you a little perspective, I actually have right here on my laptop the actual definitions of the word truth. All of us have an idea of what we think the word truth means, but let's take a look at the definition of it based on the dictionary. Now, there are a few different meanings for this, but they all seem to come around to the same basic
and
reality here.
When you look over time and you see how kind of the meanings and interpretations of words change. So if you look at like the definition of truth back in like 1828, it's going to vary slightly, up as opposed to 1910, as opposed to 2018.
And that's because people tend to redefine the word based on where they stand.
Their own perceptions.
Their perception, their own opinions. But there's a consistent meaning when you look it up in a dictionary. And there's also a consistent, even though this isn't a Bible show, but there's a consistent biblical definition of the word also.
Absolutely.
But I just want to throw at you just a couple meanings of the word truth. In fact, three definitions here of the word truth from a couple different sources. All right, first of all, truth is defined as that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. Another definition is the body of real things, events, and facts, actuality. In the last definition, if you notice, they're all similar in what they're saying. The last one is the property as of a statement of being in accord with fact or reality. Now, it's interesting, and I know you caught this, and I know you out there did too, because there are a couple things that kept popping up here when you think about it. One thing was fact.
Yeah.
And the other was reality or actuality. So basically, truth has to be based on fact or reality in order for it to be considered to be truth. Problem nowadays is nobody's actually talking facts. People are talking things based on what they feel, based on emotion. Emotions aren't always the best thing to go by when it comes down to what is truth, because we all have biases, and our biases tend to swing us in the direction of what we feel we want to believe, as opposed to what the reality is telling us.
And I think another thing, especially when you're talking about defining truth, and you're talking about reality, you're dealing with. I think it's very easy when you're talking about truth and reality, and because so if you're going to define truth, then you have to define reality. You have to define what is actual. And it's easy to get kind of caught up into these kind of existential loops, and this kind of kind of downward spiral of trying to define those words, and then at the end of the day, rather than kind of using a bit of common sense, which some of our listeners might even kind of chagrin at me using that term, but instead of using a little bit of common sense, and we kind of get caught into these loops and these kind of logical traps, which kind of keep us from kind of being realistic with ourselves. There goes that word reality again.
Reality is a big part of it.
And I think that is a big part of it. I think it's very, very easy to get caught up in that, and so before you know it, you were once talking about the definition of truth, but before you're kind of taking a whole bunch of different side passages, and now you're on a whole nother topic, and the question never really gets answered. I mean,
you're right.
And I know you can speak from experience, in discussions that you've had with people, and I can as well, that a lot of times that's where it'll lead, know, and it makes it really hard to come to a consensus. And I think that's one of the biggest problems. Is that so much of what people perceive as being the truth is based off upon their own perceptions,
what they want to believe, rather than what the evidence or the facts. And actually, you can say what they want to believe many times is void of fact.
Absolutely.
See, people tend to create this alternate reality, and then the alternate reality, whatever they think or they believe from an emotional standpoint of view is true, they just accept it to be the truth. And that's what's happening in America today. Is that I believe that there are a lot of folks who are caught up in this alternate reality rather than dealing with the actual truth. And in all honesty, I think there's a lot of components to this. I think that there's a lot of players involved in this. Politicians, a lot of politicians have a tendency to create this alternate reality, which is based on their own agenda, and they're trying to convince people that this is what the truth is, but yet and still is void of fact. But it's only because they have an agenda, and what they do is they create a truth within their own mind that fits their agenda, but it is not fact. It is not reality. It is simply to manipulate people, because folks don't tend to want to look deeper anymore, try to find out what's false and what's not false.
Very true. That's actually I think one of the biggest issues that we have in dealing with reality, and dealing with finding the truth when you're talking about a myriad of topics, is the fact that people don't want to dig to really find information. They don't want to really dig to find the reality of whatever issue is being touched on or spoken upon. And if you can ascribe words to a situation, and use those words to bend people's perception to just about anything you want, if you're eloquent enough and knowledgeable enough when it comes down to language and psychology. So I think that's a big part of it too, is people kind of being aware of what's being said versus what's really going on, and kind of being able to, absolutely, two different things. I mean, how many times have you seen somebody or spoken to somebody and they seem so deluded with when it comes down to a certain issue. We've touched on some issues in some of our previous shows that people have been kind of deluded. That's a bit judgmental. I don't want to use that word deluded, so I'm gonna retract that, and I'm gonna say, in my opinion, mistaken about, just flat out wrong about, when you talk about the conditions of certain areas. We've talked about some cities that are in dire straits right now, but if you talk to some folks, they'll tell you how great things are going. You look at certain areas in California. We've listed all the cities in past shows, and people tell you how great things are going, but when you walk the streets,
but look at the ones that'll tell you how great it is. It's the politicians are the ones that are saying that things are fine, everything's looking well, we're looking good, we're making progress, when the truth of the matter is they're not. So what it is again, I have to say, they're creating this alternate reality. But see, people tend to be very emotional, and when emotionalism comes into the picture, it has a tendency to veer from the common sense idea that we need facts. So we move from the common sense idea that I don't see any evidence or any facts to support this, to the emotional aspect, which says, wow, I'm with this. It must be true. And see, that's the problem. But then you got another part of this that's feeding in this too, and that's called the mainstream media. So a lot of the mainstream media are playing into the same narrative with the politicians, and they're basically supporting that narrative and feeding it out. It's been said that if you say something enough times, even though it's a lie, people will begin
People
to believe
accept it
it's
as
the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it all the time.
There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And we see it in the world today, especially in America.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. In America, and I think that's one of the things that we see entirely too much of. And I think when we talk about this issue, we have to try to figure out what I'd like to try to pose ideas on what people can do, to try to alleviate that issue or to avoid some of those pitfalls, to avoid, getting sucked into, some sort of, false truth or whatever you want to call it. Just ways for people to kind of vet their information and sources. And I think that one of the biggest things that we can do with that is to hold people accountable. If what somebody's saying isn't matching up with what's going on, you can't buy into it. You can't go along with it because even if what they're doing aligns with maybe something that you want to do, I think that truth and accountability has to play a role, because other than that, what are we doing? We're rewarding liars.
I mean that's true, but unfortunately, I think that a lot of people don't want to vet the information that they're getting. They just want to accept it. Because you have to remember, a lot of things that's happening in America right now is all about politics. And when you have two forces coming together, the mainstream media with politicians with an agenda, when they both work together, people are being fed. They're being spoon-fed exactly what the politicians want you to hear through the media.
Right.
And so people have a tendency to begin to believe, and of course, one of the big problems is that people are so emotional nowadays. They're actually feeding off an emotional frenzy. So when it comes down to the mainstream media, I mean, they're culpable in this too, because Absolutely. The truth of the matter is,
they feed that beast for sure.
Ain't no doubt about it. They're spewing out a whole lot of information that is not based on fact, but is tainted with bias, because it's all on let's be honest, it's all on the political left. So everything that's being fed right now is not being vetted. It's just being put out there because people are caught up in an emotional frenzy right now, and I believe that the politicians are conducting this orchestra, and they're getting this narrative moving more and more and more. So now we have this crescendo. This thing is building up to a crescendo, and people are taking in all of this information, and they are perceiving that it is fact. And some people don't even want to know what the truth is. They don't want to know what is truth. They just want to know what it is that they can be on the side of because it fits in their political ideology. A lot of stuff is political ideology. Now, when it comes down to the media, let's face the facts. Once upon a time, I thought the news was about giving me what's happening in the world.
That's what it was. That's what you would think, right?
That's what you thought. I mean, something's happening in the world.
Been like that for a long time.
It's changed, man. What's going on in the world? You tell me what's going on in the world, and then you let me interpret it for myself. You give me information.
To be an unbiased presentation of information.
But you know what's happened? When you have a situation where the news outlets move from reporting news, events that are happening in the world, be it local or worldwide, when they move from reporting that news to giving opinions, their own personal opinions based on their own biases, you know what happens? They move away from fact. They move away from fact checking. They move away from the reality of what the news is supposed to be about, and they get caught up into something that is called personal bias. And I've seen it over and over and over again watching the news. A lot of these news networks, where I see them actually so caught up into the bias, they can't even report the news because they're too busy speaking and reporting their own personal bias about how they feel. Now, I don't want to know how a newscaster feels. I simply want a newscaster to give me the news.
Yeah.
But America, you're being caught up into this frenzy. And the question is, what is truth? Do they even know what truth is anymore? Do they want to know what truth is?
That's what I was about to say. do people really want the truth? Do they want to know what the truth is? Do they want the truth? You know, and that's the question right there. And when you look at the condition of the nation right now, it seems that a lot of people just don't really want the truth.
They don't.
The truth isn't always, it's not always pleasant. You get the truth. It's not always, what you want to hear.
Exactly.
It's much easier to swallow a pill that tastes good. The truth is often bitter.
Yeah,
so,
that's the truth. That's the truth, man.
Yeah, so I think that as far as what can be done about that, I mean, obviously that that's a philosophical question that's beyond the two of us to come to terms with. But I think it's.
But there are a couple things that people can do, though.
Yeah,
there's something they can do.
For sure. I mean, for one, you can hold folks accountable.
And number two, people can come off of the emotional high that they're on, or the emotionalism, the emotional ride that they're on, and when it comes right down to it, and begin to seek out the facts, the evidence.
Don't feed into identity politics.
Well, that's a big one right there, because that's all it's about. Yeah. And nowadays, identity politics, I mean, that's the soup of the day.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
That's the soup of the day.
That's it too, man. And that's the thing about it is when you are that deeply ingrained in a group, you're going to go along with whatever the group says a lot of times. I mean, you kind of fall into that groupthink philosophy.
Yeah, it's a shame.
You identify so deeply. You are willing to accept, something that's not true as the truth, because to do otherwise, means that, something that you have tethered so much of yourself to, you'd have to admit that, maybe you made a misstep doing that. And a lot of people don't really want to do that.
Yeah, people don't want to admit to missteps or mistakes. But the problem of it is now we're still sitting here faced with that same question: what is truth? And in this politically charged country, nation that we're in right now, where so much is being spewed out, where things become so vitriol, where people are actually at one another's throat nowadays, where the politicians are taking opposite sides of the fence, and they're literally having a war with one another, and it's all over political power, and the American people are caught up in the middle of it. The news media, many of them, not all of them, but many of them, the news media outlets are a part of this. They're participants in the deceiving of the American people. We are being deceived by many of the news media outlets. We're being deceived by many of the politicians.
Absolutely.
And people aren't willing to stop for a minute and think about it. Politician yells out that these people are against us. You got to get them. You got to stop them. You got to run them over. You got to run them down. You got to don't let them eat. Don't let them wash. I mean, we're listing all of these things that they're saying, but have you stopped to think, are the politicians lying about what they're saying? Are they giving you the truth, or they're just giving you whatever feeds into their narrative? They have you on a hook and they're reeling you in. Me, I'd rather find out what the truth is.
And a good rule of thumb that I use when I'm listening to people is if I hear too many emotional pleas in somebody's oration, when they're speaking, when they're trying to sway me to a cause, that gives me pause, you know, because to me, you know, that's a well-known, you know, tool that can be used. That emotional plea is well documented. I mean, you look at you know, any Shakespearean play, there's probably some sort of emotional plea there. I mean, it's, you know, it's pretty common. But it's often used as a tool to sway, you know, especially large groups of people, you know, into you know, either as a call to action or, you know, some form of, you know, some line of thinking. So whenever I hear somebody making an emotional plea, the cornerstone of their argument, of their position, that gives me pause. And you know, to me, I would, that's one suggestion that I would give to anybody, you know. I mean, of course, you know, you want to listen, and, you know, there are causes that, you know, that is going to tug at your heartstrings a bit, but you gotta, again, make sure that whatever it is that, you know, this individual is speaking on, you want to make sure that it's the actual truth, you know, before you get swept up into, you know, into an emotional fervor and rallying behind a cause that may or may not be, you know, as it's presented to you.
And you know, a lot of times it isn't. I mean, for me, anytime someone starts telling me that I have to turn on someone else, that I need to attack someone else, anytime someone is trying to convince me that a whole segment of people are against me and they're the enemy and I have to stop them at all costs. Anytime I hear somebody spewing out a whole bunch of rhetoric saying that these people are trying to attack our very a way of life, and they're trying to rip down our agenda for America. Anytime you hear people that are speaking all of these things and in turn telling you that you have to go after these people, you've got to stop these people, you've got to press on them, you got to keep them from going to restaurants, you got to keep them from this, you got to keep them from that. Anytime I hear a call to begin to come against people and attack people, every time I hear a call for people to even with the very indication which people try to deny the fact, we're not calling anybody to violence, but when I hear certain words, man, I know that people are basically making a call for the constituents to move and attack those who believe differently from them or have a different political agenda. If you're telling me that I've got to go to war against somebody, I want to know the truth. Because how many wars have been started over a lie? How many people have been killed over a lie? How much damage has been done to nations over lies? You need to, before you start attacking people, and you got all these other groups out there running around wanting to attack people and want to hurt people, before you start moving to acts of violence, you need to make sure that the people who are telling you that these people are your enemy, make sure that they're not trying to feed their own agenda and using you as a pawn in order to fit into the narrative that they want to stop those people. All those people my enemy? I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent. You're not my enemy. You're not my enemy.
Absolutely. And that's it right there, man. You know, we got to make sure that, you know, these people are being honest and forthright with us. So,
what is truth?
What is truth? Ask
yourself that question, America. What is truth?
What is truth?
And until next time, we'll see you on the road.
Peace.
And that's the truth.